Have you ever noticed that you can't just be your authentic self around certain people, certain situations, or sometimes even the people that you love? Then today's show is for you. Welcome back to Mystical Journeys with Jase. Recently, I was pondering something. So, in today's episode, we're going to talk about masks. And I want to open it up with this. I had a wonderful conversation with a friend of mine very recently. She's a good friend from Texas and also a podcast listener. She was telling me about her trip that she took very recently and sharing about how she was with some family members. And we ended up talking about just different subjects. But one subject was interesting was we ended up talking about keeping your energy up. One of the other subjects that came up was how not everybody understands the way that we actually are. If you remember a few weeks ago, I put out an episode about being real. And recently I put out a series of episodes called Who Am I? And what I wanted to say is when you get more of your energy back, and even after you've done a very spiritual healing, what ends up happening is you become a good bit more real. And when you're around a lot of other people, what can end up happening is you realize that you actually just can't be yourself sometimes. So let's tackle that a little bit and discuss why. So here you are, you're around some family members for a couple of weeks, and all of a sudden, the next thing you know is that you realize you just can't be yourself. Not because you don't want to be real, it's just that they're going to try to pull you away from that because they have their own fears. They have their own level of development. Maybe that level of development is not on the same level as yours. Why did this matter? Because it's the moment that shows you that the mask isn't a lie, it's a protection. So, what do you have to do with that one? Well, let's talk about the concept of a mask. You have to take a mask. Now, think about that for a second. In the concept of the Phantom of the Opera, he had half of a mask because he was trying to hide something that was not agreeable to everybody. But let's take a look at that for a second. Sometimes we have to wear a half mask because that part of us that may end up being incredibly beautiful. It's a very authentic thing that we've learned to live with and we've learned to lead. Guess what? Sometimes that very essence can be very scary to most people. I mean, think about history for a moment. How many times have we seen leaders that were very open minded and spiritual and shining their light to everybody? How many times have you seen them where they were just put to the torch? How many of them have been killed for shining their light, trying to wake people up? I mean, think about that for a second. If somebody's trying to awaken everybody's consciousness, that can look pretty scary to many or some people. So when you're around people that are like that, sometimes what you have to do is just put up at least a half a mask and just reflect back to them whatever it is that they like to do. I have another friend, and he's a pretty good fellow. Whenever we have our conversations, we can talk about a couple of things that are important to him. Like we can talk about some job stuff. We can talk about football. We can talk about just other things we've done, things like that. And that's the mask that I show him. It's like a facet on a crystal. As I just turn that facet to him, we have a great time together. We talk, we go to dinner, we have a wonderful time. But the other sides that are very deep in my life, even including telling him about this podcast, it's just not something he's going to go out of his way to take a look at. I've mentioned it and he's already said he wasn't interested. No problem. That's fine. So I keep that facet facing him, keep that part of the mask facing him. That allows him to feel more comfortable and it feels okay to him. Now, let's get back to my friend earlier when she said she was on a trip recently. Here, she did a lot in her own life to straighten out her energy. And what did she have to do? Even though that she loved her family very much, she just didn't want to let too much of that energy get knocked off center. She focused on the fun. She focused on the camaraderie with her family. She focused on the very things that are really neat. Maybe the very real person, that part of her personality that's great. And she kept a lot of her light to herself. And then she gets back. And guess what happened? When she got back, she felt pretty darn good. She was able to prevent the loss of a lot of energy by being around the same mindsets that she'd been around her whole life. And guess what she ended up doing? She was all excited to be back and to begin leading her life again based on that new energy. And I got to admit, I was really proud of her because I figured the very people who were around her, some of them really sucked a lot of that energy out of her. And I'm glad that she ended up being okay. Think about that. For a pretty long period of time, she had to wear that mask or that half mask. Now, don't get me wrong. She still shared as much of her authentic self as she could, but she was able to protect those parts of herself that she didn't want to see get damaged or knocked off center. And for that, I have to say, I'm very proud of her. And she definitely knows who she is. Masks we shouldn't wear. Here's one of the first ones to think about. How many times have you had an image of yourself that you thought you were this or you thought you were that? And then later on, you really took some time to figure it out and you started to look and you say, hey, maybe I'm not this person. I remember when I was in my 20s and I came to the conclusion that no matter what, I probably would never go to the Olympics. That was a mask I wore for a bit. So I thought I should be good enough. I should just keep on pressing hard. I can do this. Well, eventually those masks, when you have those masks on, they don't work for you anymore. You have to come to terms with it and just say, you know what? I'm no longer this mask. I'm no longer going to go focusing on this image that I thought I would be someday. I need to start focusing on more of what I really want to do. I'm no longer that facade. I'm no longer that identity. And guess what ends up happening? Then you have put aside something that is no longer a part of you. And that's really good because you're moving on the path of being authentic. All right, here's another one to think about. Masks that we put on other people. Yeah, how about that one? I remember in a group that I was a part of for a lot of years, there was this gentleman, and I got to tell you, he had this incredible charisma. I mean, whenever this guy walked in the room, everybody liked to be around him. He had the most unbelievable charisma. Wonderful guy. But in the end, I eventually ended up finding out he was a pretty rough character in his background. Now, think about that for a second. What was everybody doing, including myself? You put on a mask onto that person as though they can do no wrong, that they are just this complete idol of society. But in the end, that was the mask that I held up for them. Eventually, you've got to take that mask down and you realize, you know what? This person, they put on their pants with two legs just like I do. And they still have several things that they make mistakes on. In the end, I've got to make sure I don't completely idolize that person so I lose track of who they actually are. Focus more on understanding that person. This way, you can learn to drop the mask you put up for them. All right, what can we learn from all this here? There are times we're going to pick up a mask and we're going to hide our light from somebody. There are times that we don't want to comprehend something. We may put a mask on somebody else or a situation. There are times at work when we just have to toe the line and just get through the week. And that's also a mask that we're going to have to wear. So this week, we're going to give you a couple of things to do. Yes, I want you to observe the places where you have had to put that mask on, especially as soon as you walk in the door to work. Because when you walk in that door to work and the first thing a person says, "So, hey, what'd you do over the weekend?" Now, if I answer them, I would say, "Hey, I was working on my podcast and discussing subjects about masks." Guess what they'd probably do? Probably look at me kind of funny. So here's your first piece of homework. Be aware of when you put that mask on when you're in front of people and be aware of why. All right. Second piece of homework. I want you to look around the people that you can see as doing no wrong and see that there's a mask. Maybe you put on them. Maybe there's a person you know that's on television, maybe a political figure or something like that. Maybe you just put on too much of a mask for them. Maybe what you need to do is just kind of pull that mask down a little bit and see what happens when you pull that down. You might just see them the way that they actually are. Third, let's take a look at some masks you put on to situations, things that you really need to attend to, but you're going to just put a mask over it for the time being because you really just don't want to deal with it. Well, you can keep on looking at the mask, but in the end, you're going to have to fix it. I keep saying, "Oh no, it'll be okay. It'll be okay." And that's a real example of putting a mask on something. Here's a really good example of this. I need to take that mask off and just go take care of the thing I need to fix around the house. It's only going to take me an hour. But how many times have I put that mask up? Maybe 3, 4 hours saying that that situation at the house doesn't need to be taken care of. Each time I put another mask up for it, making sure, hey, it's fine to ignore this problem. But guess what? In the end, I'm going to drop the mask and fix the problem. All right. Here's your weekly challenge. This week, I want you to work on taking your time to see where these masks get placed. See the places where you can take them down and also see what you can do when you see that person that's carrying a mask. Maybe if it's an opportunity for you to help them drop that mask as well. So here's what I'd like you to do. When you see those masks and those people, take a moment, ask them, help them to find more of their real self and see what that does. That's the thing I'd like you to work on this week. I'd like you to take a look and see the places where you've put up your own mask. I'd like to have you take a look at some of the situations that you have put a mask over. I'd like you to take a look and see some of the people that you've put a mask in front of them. Think about this week. And I want you to make sure that ponder a little bit about dropping those masks. Why did you do it? Did you do it to protect your energy? Did you do it because you were afraid? Ponder that a little bit this week. Okay. So let's start with that. All right. Here's something else I'd like you to do. I'd like you to tell just one friend about this podcast, especially about the mask one here. Help them to understand it a little bit better. and see how that friend reacts when you talk about the subject of masks. I think you're going to have a really interesting conversation. Here's something to think about as far as people. Everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time, including the people you've put up on a pedestal. Think about that for a moment. All right. Just one more thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is I want to let everybody know that on the website, I now have a location called Kofi and, or might be called Coffee. Sorry about that. KO-FI. And I'm putting some additional workbooks up there and it's going to cost a few bucks, but I've got to say every workbook you buy is going to help the channel. And if you decide you want some personal work on the Who Am I series, I'm actually working with somebody right now through the Who Am I series, and it's literally taking months off the stagnation that they've had. And they're starting to push through and start to grow really strongly. So just want to tell you, I'm putting out a lot of products and things like that. They're going to be up there on the website. Feel free to check out the website, mysticaljourneyswithjase.com. You'll find the links on there. All right. Lastly, I wanted to say this. I want you to keep on learning, keep on growing. I've been getting a lot of good feedback about this podcast, and people seem to be getting a lot out of it. So that's my challenge for you this week. I want you to think about the areas that you can grow from. Think about some of the places where you'd like to do something else with your life. Start making some adjustments and go forward. Lastly, thank you for taking time to listen to this podcast. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really does help the channel. And like I've said before, keep curious. Keep focusing on that spirituality. And on behalf of everyone who's around you that you may or may not realize that you're trying to grow, we want to say to you, thank you. Thank you for pushing forward with your growth because in this world, it definitely needs more people like you.